Forever, baby. That's from Victorious, by the way.
Braided.
Yes, I know. I've seen that show.
Claw clip.
And then-
It's
and
so
then-
creepy
then-
now that I know all the things I know about Dan
then-
Schneider.
Then their dog, not
What?
the dog, the puppet.
You haven't seen the shit about Dan Schneider?
No.
He has a major foot fetish. Like,
Well, and
creepy.
he is like a pedophile.
Oh, is
What
that why
is
there's
what?
feet in it?
You don't like it?
Yeah, he's like
It
a
looks
straight up
perfect.
pedophile.
They
It
always
came
put a
with
bunch of
two.
feet shit
And
in it.
there's
Wait,
like
right
rumors
behind
that
you.
he's the reason that Jeanette McCurdy like quit acting.
Doesn't act anymore. Yeah, I
Huh?
saw that.
Because she's
Let me
not
see.
coming back
Can
for
I
the
see your
iCarly
wiener?
reboot.
Yeah,
Come show
because
me.
he's creepy as fuck. Is he like the director of all those?
Yeah, he did all of those. He did Victorious, iCarly, he did Sam
Say
and
my
Oh, no,
Cat.
hat.
Fits you fine.
He did all of those.
Hey, bitches. I'm just kidding. Can I greet people like that? Probably not. Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Who What Where podcast. I'm Abigail
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Caitlin.
and we are your hosts.
And we're your hookers from hell.
Okay.
I'm saying
It
that
sounds
because-
weird,
Speak
but
for
it is
yourself.
relevant. It sounds weird, but it's relevant, okay? I promise. Just give us some time. So, this week, do we have any recent news, true crime, my friends?
I've been watching Dance Moms reruns, which I feel like
Which is
should be
true
a
crime.
Which is a true crime.
What happened recently?
It's a true crime that I'm watching it, and it's also a true crime. how-
Ooh, the
they were treated.
other day, my sister, one of these girls, Caitlin and I were downtown at a Red Robin, and then we got home, and apparently, like a couple right after we left, there was like a attempted stabbing.
Oh,
So I mean, that's true crime, right?
that's not true
maybe.
crime for Spokane. That's just a Tuesday.
That's honestly like not that weird.
Boom,
Honestly, way crazier shit
Boom,
happens. And that's kind of like
Yeah,
the fun of
Spokane-
it, you know? That's why I stay.
It's a special place, you know. Like
Is it why
you,
I stay?
you might get stabbed, like at
Well,
any
yeah.
given moment, inside of an establishment or not. You might get
And
stabbed.
Connor wonders why I want to move to Renton.
I mean, to
Every
be fair,
reason.
you could get stabbed here too.
I'm
Like
just kidding.
Some
I've
parts of
almost
Renton are
been
like
stabbed
scary.
at least 4 times.
Before we get started here, I just want to throw out that a lot of the information that I found in research, first of all, is mainly from the murderer. Like, what's the word?
It's things that she has like said.
So she
Yeah.
talks a lot in interviews, and it's really interesting. She is like kind of, I mean, obviously she's kooky. She's dead, but obviously she's kooky. And like she changes her story a lot. And like if you listen to the interviews, she just sounds like she's like, yeah, I did that. What's your point? And it's like really terrible, but also kind of funny. And like not in a like, it's funny
Not
because
funny, haha.
yeah, I'm making fun of her, not the victims. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So she also like she changes her story all the time. Like she'll say one thing and then the other thing is the truth. Anyways.
Yeah, you have to take what she says with a grain of salt because she did murder like a bunch of people, and she seems to have a little bit of she seemed to have a little bit of like psychotic issues of some sort.
There's definitely something going on here, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, I know that she was using drugs on and off, and we'll get into it.
But yeah, I think
So-
what you said about her being in her clips of her talking, if you guys like pause the
So
podcast,
weird.
go listen to one of her videos so you understand what we're
You'll
talking
know what we
about,
mean.
because it is
She
interesting.
talks
It
like
caused people to think of her a lot differently than we think of most like quote unquote serial killers.
she sounds very, and I mean, we'll talk at the end kind of about theories, but she sounds very like sure of herself, very confident, and she's very much like, yeah, that happened. Like, what's your point? I didn't do, or like, it could have been worse, basically. And we'll get there, but just set a little scene for you. Imagine. So let's set the scene for you. It's January 1986. A woman named Tyria. I don't know which one it is, but she goes by Ty. A woman named Ty and Aileen Wuornos walk separately into a gay bar. I was trying to make a bar, like walk into a bar joke. It didn't
Walk
go well.
separately
I'm
No, I love
sorry.
it. I'm so enthralled. Keep going.
Well, I mean, we kind of got to jump back to the beginning because there's a lot that happens in between. I'm sorry. Okay, I was trying really hard. Okay, so no, here we go. Here's even better. Close your eyes. Imagine you're in
You're face to
Florida,
face with Aileen
but not
Wuornos.
not beachy Florida, not nice Florida. Might get murdered Florida.
Yeah,
You know,
Gator's
two
gonna
different
attack
things.
you.
We all know. I'm pretty sure we're all kind of familiar with the sensation of Florida and how
CSI Miami.
how
Fair.
loopy it is. I'm scratching my head because it's that weird, but you just can't see me. Okay, so
Like Florida man weird.
If
yeah,
someone
Florida
says, if we say Florida, just assume that some crazy stuff's about to go down, basically.
do you guys remember when we were like, it was a couple years ago, but you looked up like Florida man and then your birthday and it
Oh,
gave you
yeah.
like a news article and that was just is a good time to be alive, you know?
Not if you lived in Florida, but if you lived anywhere
So
else, yeah.
essentially we're saying, no offense to Floridians, I'm sure there's some good people out there that are from Florida. I don't even know if we have any listeners from Florida, but it's not surprising that this is the scene. Aileen Wuornos, first of all, will be closing out our Women's History Month series, I guess. And she was known affectionately in the news by Damsel of Death and The Hooker from Hell, which is my personal favorite, and
That is my
also
favorite,
referencing
too.
Hannah's little intro there. Aileen was born as Aileen Carol Wuornos. Is it Wuornos?
That's what I've always said.
Okay, cool. Cool beans. Was born in Rochester, Michigan on February 29th, 1956, which is Leap Day, correct?
Oh, so that's what's wrong with her.
I was going to say.
Yeah, that is Leap Day.
That's Leap Day, correct? So she was born on Leap Day in 1956 to teenage parents Leo Dale and Diane Wuornos. She never met her father after birth. Her mom actually filed for divorce, which they're teenagers. Could you imagine being married and divorced by the time you turn 20? I can't. She filed for divorce 2 months before she gave birth to Aileen, and she was not a fan of him. He had a lot of issues, and I mean, a lot of things like this run in genes, unfortunately. So she didn't have a great shot in life, but he was imprisoned for various sex crimes against children. And then he committed suicide eventually. During his life, though, he was like talked about in newspapers and articles about being like a psychopath. And when he was young, apparently he would play a game of tying cats together, like two cats together by their tails, and then throwing them over like a clothesline so that they would fight, which I just never would that come to my mind. Also, do we think that he's tying them together, or do we think he's using like a rope? Because I don't think cattails can tie together.
You know, I'm sure the semantics of it are really not like
Basically,
that's not
if
the most
your
graphic
child
part.
ever tries to tie cats together by the tail, they're
Take 'em to-
possibly
yeah.
psychotic or
Right. Mhm.
whatever. What psychopaths?
He also
Sociopaths.
was a diagnosed schizophrenic. So, I
Okay.
mean,
So he really did have
at least we
issues.
know what was going on, you know?
Cute.
So,
Because I got
Aileen.
issues. You got them so.
So give them all to me.
Yeah. There you go.
Aileen, who was almost 4 at the time of this, it was in 1960, and her brother, who I forgot to write down his name. My apologies, friends.
Clearly not
But
important.
he doesn't come up a lot. Him and her got ditched essentially by their mom at their maternal grandparents' house. And so, I mean, she grew up thinking that these were her parents because she didn't know any better. Like, she didn't know otherwise.
Well, and her mom was like 16.
Yeah, her mom was
So.
young. And so I think it just seemed like normal to a lot of people. Like, her parents looked like they could be her parents based on like how young they were. But also like they just never really had a reason to talk about it. And I guess she didn't have any memories from her mom because she was under 4. So I feel like that's pretty normal. And so basically, I mean, there's a lot of bad things happened to her when she was young. And I know that that's not the story is about, but it is about her life and like the crimes she committed. And I think that is relevant. Just because I mean,
yeah, I mean, so
I know
like
the saying's like bad things happen to good people. Bad things also happen to bad people.
yeah.
And that's sometimes what makes them bad.
Yeah. Well, and if you're listening to a true crime podcast, you know about her. She's the most like she's kind of like the poster child of female serial killers.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why she is like such a kind of unique case and why a lot of people like to talk about her or research her is because she, like most serial killers, had a really, really horrible upbringing. But when we talk about her crimes later and we kind of talk about like her reasoning behind the crimes, that's where it kind of starts to differ from other serial killers. So it's not that she's just a woman, it's also some other stuff that we'll talk about later.
Yeah. So I read different ages for this fact, but some sources say 9 years old, some sources say 11 years old. She became sexually active and would perform sex acts. It's awful to call them that because she was a child, but she would perform sex acts for like cigarettes or food or money, candy. I saw like just things like that, you know, and I mean that's awful, but she also mentions that her brother and her were sexually active together. Didn't really find any details on that, which I am thankful for, but apparently there were some kind of incest going on there, and they were young. So I mean, I feel like slightly better. And some sources say that it was non-consensual. So I'm not sure, but her grandfather,
Was her brother older than her?
I believe he was younger. His name is Keith. He was born in 1955, so he's younger. Slightly.
Yeah, younger by 1 year. Probably
No,
like
older. Older, I mean.
Yeah, older by like 1 year. So it was probably
Yeah. So
I was
they're
like,
similar.
am I missing something? 55 is before 50.
But that does kind of change the way you think about
No.
things because I mean, especially because we know what Aileen did in her life. If he was younger than her, you would kind of be like, "Oh, okay, she's like being a little, pervy," but he's older than her, so then that's kind of like it flips the narrative a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I feel like it does
he
make
took advantage
slight
of her
difference.
versus she took advantage of him.
I think that doesn't have to do so much with age though, because he was less than a year older than her, like 11 months. So right at a year. And so I think that if
Well, and also
there
you can
was
assume that they were both experiencing a lot of trauma because of their upbringing.
right.
Right,
And
like
if
all
it
these things that
was
Eileen had, come to term like dealt with in her childhood. Keith her probably dealt with the same exact things.
right. So, basically, she just went through a lot of abuse in her childhood, whether or not her brother was abusing her or if it was consensual. Her grandfather also abused her. He raped her often and even like would invite his friends over to rape her, which reminds me of Gertrude Banazuski, which
Ew.
she was psycho. So we know how we feel about that. I just can't imagine, like, obviously, I can't imagine doing that kind of horrible thing, but then, like, inviting your friends in on it, like, does that make it worse? Because I feel like it does.
Yeah, because then it's not just like you can
Yeah, way
use
worse.
it was in the moment. No, you like
Right.
had it, you thought about it, you made a decision to do it, and then you made a decision to invite other people over. Yeah, he's
Yeah, and it
some of
wasn't
the
just like
trash
once.
pieces.
It's pretty horrible. And then she finally at 12 learned that her grandparents weren't her parents. And I mean, that obviously has to be like weird when you're 12 years old and you're like, wait a minute, huh? And a couple of years later, at 14, her grandfather's friend impregnated her.
Oh my god.
And so, I mean, obviously that was rape, but I saw like some sources that, and I understand people don't want to like give her any like sympathy, but I feel like it's okay to give people sympathy even if they ended up being bad people. Like you can still feel bad that bad things happen to them.
Well, you can feel bad for the child and like not feel bad for the adult that the child became, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do to some degree like really believe that some if things had just been handled, if these things had not happened to her, it's possible that things would have gone differently. You know what I mean? And so I think that's like
Well,
something to consider.
she grew to hate men for very obvious
Basically.
reasons, you
And we'll
know?
get into
Like,
that and we can chat more about that at the end too. But I mean, you'll get what we mean when I say, like, if this hadn't happened, who knows? So in 1971, she was 14 and she must have been 15. Yeah, she was 15 in 1971 and she was sent shortly before her baby's birth to like live and stay at a birth center for unwed mothers temporarily. And so she went there, gave birth, and gave her baby up for adoption. I believe it was a girl. And maybe it was a boy. I don't remember. Anyways, she gave the baby up for adoption. And then that same year, her grandmother, who she grew up with as her mother essentially, died of liver failure. And so she dropped out of school. Obviously, it was a
Bad year.
hefty year for her. Yeah, it was not a good year by any means.
But side note, do you think that the baby that she gave up for adoption knows that this is their mother?
So I did try to like find some info on that. And from what I saw, like there's not a lot known about the baby. Like
Probably for its own sake to protect the child.
right. Probably the own sake as well as like documentation just wasn't as great back then for adoption and there wasn't as many like rules in place. I feel like as now everything has to be like done through proper channels, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
That was just a random thought I had.
but it was
Just
a boy.
imagine knowing that this was your mom. I mean, I feel like I would want to know because of like some of this must be genetic. Some of
Right.
the psychological
And I
issues
almost
might be because
wonder,
her father was,
yeah. And I
so.
almost wonder like maybe if she had, if they told the kid, but they didn't release the info to the public, because you would want them to be like checked up on, you know? And so she gave the baby for adoption. Her grandma dies. It was a bad year. And then shortly after, I want to say she was 16, her grandfather was like, bye, leave my house. And so she kicked her and her brother out. Her brother left and like went his own way, and she was just staying in the woods, like in this like nature area, which, I mean, that sounds terrifying, you know, like being a teenager and having to
So
live
she
by
was like a
yourself.
transient.
And wait, was this when she
Yeah.
was in Florida already or no?
No, she's in Michigan
Oh, I was
still.
gonna say, because Florida, the gators are in the woods, so some bad stuff could happen.
Yeah, you might
But
not want to live
Michigan,
in the
I'm
woods
sure
living in
there's
Florida.
scary stuff in the woods there too,
Like murderers.
like
Dun dun dun.
like herself.
So, she basically was doing sex work to survive. She, I mean, that's just how she was feeding herself. She was obviously like a transient is a good way to describe it. And then she was arrested when she was 18 for a DUI, firing a pistol from a moving vehicle, disorderly conduct, and then failure to appear for that trial. So later on, she was charged with failure to appear. She didn't serve a sentence. She obviously didn't show up to her court trial, so she just hitchhiked to Florida, as one does, to add to the population of crime doers. And she stayed there.
Abby, those are called criminals. A crime doer is a criminal. Just FYI.
No.
Add this to the word bank of words that we do not know the meaning.
This week on words we don't understand / can't pronounce / use incorrectly. Criminals. She wanted to add to the population of criminals. I mean, maybe that was her intent. I don't know. So she hitchhiked to Florida, and she met lovely Lewis. And my man Lewis, he was a wealthy yacht club president. He had lots of money, and he basically, he was old. If you look at the photos, it's like kind of weird because she like looks way younger, but they get married super quickly. It's weird. People were like, and they were in the paper because it was like a big socialite thing that he was getting married. And so they get married, and during their marriage, like, I don't know why he married her, honestly. She doesn't seem like a stand-up gal. I mean, maybe she was like, I mean, she was young and she wanted to be with him. So I don't know. I don't know the man, but poor dude. She would go to like out to bars and get in like fights with people and get arrested. And so she kind of was like in and out of like little short stints in jail for assault during her time with him. And then eventually she like broke and attacked him with his own cane, which is just fucked up. Like, what a bitch. And he was like, thankfully, I feel like this is the only thing in this case that makes like logical sense. Like, he was just like, nope, get out of here. And so he got a restraining order against her, and then she went back to Michigan. So in 1976, she was charged with assault and disturbing the peace for throwing a cue ball at a bartender's head at like a bar in Michigan. I don't know if you guys have ever played pool, but cue balls are like, you wouldn't want to get hit with that. Like, even getting your fingers smashed would hurt. And so she was charged with that. And then this same year, another bad year for my homegirl, her brother died of cancer. and his insurance, like his life insurance, left her with $10,000, which you're like, oh my goodness, she can turn her life around. No, she doesn't. Surprise, surprise. Are we surprised? No. She wasted most of the money on like probably drugs. I'm not exactly sure. Something. She wasted it. And then a couple years later, she's like, not that great. Like, I spent all the money. Now I'm just gonna go back to my life of crime. I'm not gonna like try to, become a good member of society. And so she comes back to crime and she gets caught for robbery. And I also just wanted to mention really quick, first of all, she has tons of crimes on her record at this point. She's never really had like a real job. She's never had like a home. Like she's never been a renter. Like she's a transient. And while I was doing my research, I like found some info on how homeless women like will often commit like petty theft, petty crimes, just little things to be arrested and then have a place to stay in jail, which is so sad. And I don't feel bad for this lady. She's obviously a little loopy, but I just think that's like horrible that we live in a society where going to jail is like easier than getting on your feet.
Well, and like it's safer, give them a place so that they're not sleeping on the street, because it's the rape like percentage in homeless women is ridiculous. Like
I'm sure
it's not safe to like sleep outside, obviously,
right.
But
For
even in
women.
shelters, like there's a serious epidemic of rape in shelters.
So yeah, and I mean even that's a low bar that even prison is better. You know what I mean? And so it's just really sad. And so her crimes begin to like, or continue, I guess, to rack up, and she got charged with grand theft auto, resisting arrest, robbery, and like a bunch of other stuff. She, during like her crime life, her span of crimes, went by a couple different names. Susan Lynn Blahovic, Susan Lynn Blahovic, Cami Marsh Green, and Lori Christine Grody. So, I mean, that's like a lot of aliases. So I wonder if she ever got them mixed up.
Too. Like she had different
and she included middle names for all of them, and I'm like, interesting
last names. I mean, good. Yeah, clearly she was clearly she was very smart and was not afraid to like, I don't know, stick up for herself, kind of, which comes into play.
She definitely, and if you watch Monster, like the documentary that was like loosely based on her life, she definitely has like, in a terrible way, bad bitch energy, like scary bad bitch energy. Like she's very,
well, she feels like she has this like, every interview I've watched with her, she has this like sense of like society has wronged me and like this is my way of like getting back at like the world,
yeah, like she will
like,
literally
she talks
you.
very like abstractly about like, well, like just suffer on earth, so that's why like I did this, or like, she talks very abstractly about how the world has like affected her. So.
Yeah, exactly. So she, I mean, she's not a stand-up gal, but her attitude and her demeanor is very interesting in the interviews. And so if you want to, I really recommend like popping in and watching at least one, because it's so interesting. And honestly, shout out to, God, what is her name? Charlize Theron. She does a really, really great job portraying her. And if you watch like the interviews, like she like perfected her demeanor really well. So here's where it gets good or bad, depending on your outlook. In January of 1986, she walked into a Florida gay bar and met 24-year-old Tyria it has an A, but I've heard it pronounced Tyree. She went by Ty though. Tyree, Ty Moore, Ty. And they fell in love in the documentary. It's not really a documentary. It's kind of like loosely based, but she walks up to like Ty and she's like talking to her, and then she gets all offended that she's hitting on her. She's like, I'm not gay. And then they kind of like actually fall in love, and I'm like, okay, weird, but I don't know if that's like true or if that was like an embellishment, I guess.
I
But
feel like that was kind of the gay vibe in the 80s. Like,
I mean, yeah, but it was
because
a gay bar.
it wasn't like now where you could be openly gay and be relatively accepted. Like, I feel like in the 80s it was a way different world. So she probably felt like offended that someone thought she was gay. But it is
In
a gay
gay
bar.
bar?
Fair point. I mean, she clearly this lady didn't think straight.
I mean,
And
I definitely
also
agree.
we also know that she had no problem standing up for herself and like putting on like that tough girl attitude. So I'm not really surprised by that, but Ty stuck with her.
Right. So, they fall in love, fall in like whatever it is, and they move in together, and Aileen is the breadwinner essentially through her sex work. She financially supports the couple, and Ty is working at a hotel as a maid, cleaning rooms and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, just doing what they can, and Aileen gets accused of assault like many times during their relationship, and every time Ty would show up to court as like a character witness and also just a witness of the scene and be like, no, that's not what happened. Like, she totally defended her. And it's weird because it depends on, people have different theories, but I personally think she knew some of the crime that was going on. Like, she knew about it. And then in 1989, so they've been together for 3 years at this point, she started her murder spree.
I
And
also, just as a side note, I just thought of this, but I think it's interesting that she ended up with a woman because she literally hated men so much
I think it's
that
unsurprising.
I'm not surprised, but I just think it's interesting. And like, it's like those memes where everyone's like, I hate men so much, I'm just gonna start dating women.
I also know
Aileen
that
did
it's
that.
Aileen did do that. Aileen, I think it's like something to note that I've heard that sex workers will not use, like, they won't perform sex acts for people of the gender they're attracted to, and like they cater to the other gender. And so, I mean, maybe that's something to consider. I don't know if that was the case here, but she definitely had more male clients than she had female. And so,
Well, that would be an easy way for her to separate in her mind, like her personal life and her work life.
right, which is I think why a lot
Not
of,
that I think that she was really thinking that things that thoroughly, but I mean,
but I think that's like partially why some people do it. Some sex workers. And so here goes 1989, Taylor Swift's birth year. Aileen began her little murder jaunt, is what we're going to call it. And she killed 7 men over a period of less than 12 months. And she pretty much found all of her victims through sex work. So men would pick her up and she'd be like, stabby, stabby, not stabby, stabby, shooty, shooty.
Well, and she would do where she like would just like hitchhike, and but like people knew she was a sex worker, so like technically anybody picking her up. But like I also was watching a 90 minutes about this, and people were saying that like they think that she was actually kind of doing this whole like damsel in distress thing. And that's why so many people, because,
Like
you know, of course,
a
these guys'
ruse.
families were like, oh, they never would have picked up a sex worker. So people are like, I wonder if she was using like a ruse of like, oh my God, I need help. Like,
I
just a
definitely
thought.
could see that as happening. Um, but her first murder is kind of like, I definitely think it's important to the story because, first of all, Richard Mallory was her first victim. And whether or not you, I mean, obviously, murder isn't the answer to anything. But my personal opinion is that, I mean, we'll get into that later, but Richard Mallory, he's 51. He is a electronics store owner, and he picks him up. Basically, he was a convicted rapist, we found out later, but she tells the story of he attempted to rape her, um, and she killed him in self-defense. And then that's kind of what started the murder spree, is what some people think. I personally could see that. And I think people a lot of the times discount sex workers' experiences with assault because they're like, well, you're a sex worker, like that's what you do.
Yeah.
But I mean, sex workers still have every right to say, like, no.
Yeah, that's basically the big thing with this case that I've seen the most like disagreement over, was whether or not you think that her first murder, or her first murder victim, was someone who actually like sexually assaulted or raped her,
Right.
or not. And then if you do believe that that was the case, then that kind of set her off for all these other crimes because she just loved to kill people so much, apparently, like awakened something in her.
Either way, it
But
like
there are
started
people
the
that do believe that she wasn't raped, but I personally am not one to discount women's experiences, so I don't know. But again, she was kind of loopy, so maybe I mean, you really could think of it either way. You could think of it that this actually did happen, or you could think of it as, oh, she made up the story to kind of say, okay, this is why I started killing people. It wasn't because I was crazy, it was because men would rape me or assault me on
right.
the job.
Well, and like that story, it kind of lines up. Like all of a sudden, she like, you know, she meets somebody who's like way more aggressive than she's used to. She kills him in self defense, and then she's like, wow, this kind of just proves my original thoughts about men, like that I learned from like my grandfather and my dad and my brother and like every man in my fucking life.
Right.
Like I could see how that kind of triggered something where she was like, yeah, I'm gonna just, so maybe like the first one, she was initially picked up as like a sex worker. Then every time after that, maybe it was like she was like using some kind of ruse because she purposely wanted like guys to pick her up.
I don't know. I don't really feel like I believe in like the whole ruse thing for her. I didn't see like any backing to that. And obviously, the only two people that would know would be the victims and her, all of which are dead. But I think any family would be like, oh, they like my husband would never do that. Like my husband would never pick up a prostitute.
Well,
And
that's what I'm
so,
saying. I'm like, I wonder if that idea has come from the victims' families or if that came from her, Aileen herself. Because Aileen claims all of them raped her, I think.
she it depends on the day. Depends on the interview. She's a little, yeah, back and forth, but it's a whole situation. Basically, she this first man, my personal belief, and obviously we don't know and we never will probably, but I believe that the first account, at the least, I don't know about the other ones, was rape, and that she killed him in self-defense. And I don't believe that all of them were rape. I think that that's a little assuming.
Well, like statistically, that seems almost impossible.
Right, like 12 or not 12, 7 and 12 months. And I don't really know. There's not a lot of research on it, but it's just it seems like a lot. So he is also the one that is like a convicted rapist, and so we know that that one could have some truth to it. And then June 1st of 1990, David Spears, who was a construction worker, was shot 6 times. He was either 47 or 43. I read 2 different things on 2 different sources. I am sorry to his family that I don't know what I'm talking about, but he died obviously from the 6 shots. And all of them, she shot them like in various places. Like she wouldn't just be like boom, 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 like it was kind of erratic, and she shot them all a different number of times, which is why I included it, because it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, did she just shoot them until they were dead, or did she just like wing it? Because I feel like usually murderers have an MO for that, and they're like, I'm gonna shoot them 3 times and choke them with the
Right,
tube
like
saw.
she didn't like shoot them execution style in the back of the
No.
head and like call it a day. It was almost like, I don't know if she was this smart, but she wanted to make it look like it was random or not the same as, the last one, or kind of a crime of passion sort of thing. So,
Exactly. And so, yeah, that happened. And then a couple days later, a 40-year-old man whose name was Charles Karskadin, who was a part-time rodeo worker, he was shot 9 times. And the weird thing about this one is she wrapped him in an electric blanket. And so, I mean, that's a little bit strange, but it also like contributed to his decomposition because he was warm. So I mean, that's is what it is, I guess. And then
wait, was the blanket plugged in?
I don't know.
Where
Did
was
not
he?
specify. He was in like the woods, but I don't know if it was necessarily that it was like that the
It was
blanket was
almost like
on.
that was in the car or whatever,
Yeah.
and so she just wrapped him up in it.
Well, yeah,
I
and then
don't
maybe
know.
like he
Just
just
being wrapped in a blanket could cause you to be warmer, which could cause decomposition to speed up. I understand what you're saying.
yeah,
I got it.
exactly.
I figured out the puzzle myself. Thanks.
And I think it also, I do want to mention, Caitlin, that there is a lot like to be said about some people say that she was hitchhiking. And so I think that kind of helps with the prostitute part of it. Like obviously I can assume the first one was a
Well,
sex thing, but
well, and it makes sense because she would like drive their cars away from the crime scene, you know?
right.
So
Uh-huh.
after she dumped the bodies, like insinuating that she didn't have a car, you know?
Which I mean is definitely yeah. And so witnesses identified her as driving his car. Like they saw her drive off with his car and then they found his body. But August 4th, 19 so this is a couple months later, 1990, um a 50-year-old Troy Burris, he was a sausage salesman, and he like was a delivery driver, I guess. He was only shot twice, so we jumped from 9 times to 2. So maybe it's just until they die. I don't know. Inconsistent. Then, in September of 1990, September 12th, 56-year-old Charles Richard Humphreys, he went by Dick, retired. He was a retired Air Forceman. He was an investigator and police chief, and he specialized in child abuse cases. And so, I mean, I obviously don't know the man, but he seemed like a pretty like stand-up guy. So I feel like these can't be like personal attacks, because why would she attack somebody that like could have stood up for her, I don't know. And so he was shot 6 times. So once again, jumping back up there. And then on July 4th of 1990.
See, I feel like this kind of reiterates the storyline of she like just fell in love with killing people because
yeah.
it was kind of all she ever wanted to do. Really, like she didn't know it, but once she actually did it, she was like, "Oh my god, this like is fulfilling all of my sick fantasies almost." And so
Yeah.
like that's the reason why she was killing people that were seemingly innocent, or we think they might be innocent, maybe depending on what belief system you have. I think that I don't know. Just wanted to put that out there.
So, I mean, these might be in like a weird order too, because I put like when they were discovered, but then I put them in order of like when they were murdered, I believe. And so basically, July 4th of 1990, 65-year-old Peter Symes car was found, and he was I wrote seaman because I thought it was like would make sense, but he like seaman, like the ocean. And he was a merchant, and she killed him.
Like the ocean. What is happening? It's too late for us.
I agree.
Seaman. He was a
seaman.
on the
He was
sea,
a
in
man
the
on the
ocean.
sea, and a merchant seaman. I don't know. That's what all of the articles said, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but okay. And so, he was dead. We don't know how many times she shot him because they never found him. He, like, Aileen and Ty got caught with his car, like, abandoning it. So, I mean, it's safe to assume that she killed him.
I'm not buying that Ty doesn't know about any of this stuff. I think you're right that she might know more.
Yeah. But
more
then,
than we
like,
think.
So she definitely knows.
She definitely knows, but like it's more of like, was she like an accomplice, or like did she help murder them, or was she just like a
Or was she just willfully
cleanup crew?
ignorant and was like, "Love you, babe. Have fun today at work."
I mean,
well, and then there's the whole conspiracy that people are because Ty turned Aileen in.
yeah.
There's like the whole conspiracy that Ty wanted to like become like famous for it because she was like people had offered to do a documentary about her life, and so she was like, yeah, I'll tell you everything that Aileen told me, you know.
Right. And I mean, it makes sense, like even I mean, I would never commit these crimes, but I could see like turning my significant other in order to get like immunity. You know what I mean? If they did something like this and they
But
thought I
it's
was
so
connected.
weird that if Ty did know the entire time that she waited until 8 people, right? It's 8, I think. 7 people had to lose their lives. Like she just kept waiting if she really didn't know what was going on. So I don't know.
And she didn't say anything until they got caught.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that you could say that she knew the entire time, but she might not have known exactly what was happening. Like, I feel like if I knew that my partner had killed somebody, you would immediately tell police unless you were in on it more than just being like an accomplice, if you know what I mean. So,
I don't know, it's just hard to imagine, you know? And then her handprint was also on the car, so obviously they can link the two. And then lastly, November 19th of 1990, they found 62-year-old Walter Antonio. He was a trucker, a police reservist, and a security guard. And he was shot 4 times. So once again, let's just revisit the lack of MO, lots of spontaneity, but like obviously everything was very repetitive, so she was killing willfully like over and over again. But I think like as far as in the act, it was all spontaneous, and she killed all of these people with her handgun that she carried in her purse. And so she and Ty were found driving one of the victims' cars, and crashed in front of like somebody's house, like on the street. It was a minor accident. The people inside the house came outside, and then the women are like, no, we're fine. Don't call the police. And so the women like are like, it's okay, we'll just leave. And so they leave, and then they the people from inside the house called the police anyways, because they were like, this is weird. Something fishy is happening. Car's probably stolen. And obviously you wouldn't be thinking like straight to murder, but I could see myself thinking in that situation, oh, they stole this car. That's why they don't want to call the police. And then they like basically linked the murder to them, and they find like a bunch of things that were in the cars that they stole from victims at like pawn shops in the area, and Eileen's fingerprints were on them. And obviously they had her fingerprints because we know why. She
was a
committed lot
lifetime
of crimes.
criminal.
Yeah. A crime doer. And
Aileen was a crime doer that would kill seamen. That is the line that is sticking with me from this episode.
Crime doer, kill seaman. And so here we are at a biker bar in Florida called The Last Resort.
Isn't that funny?
I know, ironic. It's super ironic.
Isn't it ironic?
Literally everything I read was like ironic, like next to it. They find her and arrest her, and she's by herself. So God knows where Ty is. Also something that's funny that I read in a couple different spots, she like in the arrest records, I'm not sure from what arrest or from multiple maybe, but like in the notes section they put like attitude poor in all caps. Like she was just kind of bitchy and always angry.
I kind of love that, because I wonder if anyone would ever meet me and like write in their notes attitude
poor. I know.
It's like you're just it's like, come on, we're just having a bad day, okay? Like
I know.
I sure hope somebody would write that about me.
I know, me too. I want to
do
be
it.
cool.
Do it. Like, find out, lady. Come on.
Fuck around and find out. So then they find Ty in, guess where? Scranton, Pennsylvania. Hashtag The Office.
Stop it right now.
I'm not joking.
Oh my God. I thought you were going to say in another bar. And then I was going to be like, what is with these people? Like, they're always in a bar, which might be part of their problem, but not Scranton. Please.
Scranton.
I'm going to pretend I'm going to erase that from my memory so I never think of Scranton in a negative light again.
And so, hey, at least the crimes didn't take place there, but there is a high crime rate in Scranton. Did you not know that?
Color me surprised. I am shook.
I'm not coloring you anything. That's not. Anyways.
That's an expression, Abigail.
I know, but I was gonna say that's blackface.
Oh, and I think that was a real expression that like you can actually do. Like that like is a real expression. Like not something that we just made up because we don't know what we're talking about.
No, there was like
I've never once in my life made up a expression. I've never done that in my life. So
oh, well, I'm sorry, but we should ask the audience because
I completely disagree with that statement.
We've done that, maybe not you specifically, but we've done that multiple times
on the podcast.
We say things that literally we're thinking one like saying, and we say a completely different one, but we're like, it's fine, just pretend like they're the same thing, but they're not. We were so mistaken.
Caitlin, when she was a teenager, used to always say, let's not, and say we did.
Yeah, she says that still.
They find her, they find Ty, and now Ty like is in police custody, and they are like, hey, you want to be on our side? And Ty's like, yeah, I do. Can I get immunity? And they're like, sure, we're just gonna have you call Aileen, and we're gonna record your phone calls and see if you can get a confession out of her. And she was like, okay. And 3 days later, they get a confession out of Aileen. She ends up getting a separate trial for each victim, which, I mean, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. I don't exactly know the rules. I don't know if you guys have any input, but on how they decide if they do it together or separate.
So they would have to, if the crimes are similar enough, they could do it, but they'd have to prove that like the intent was the same and that they all could be tried as the same thing. Because if you tried them all together and then like
You have to do 7
one of
counts
them,
of, yeah.
well, yeah, like if one of them, like the jury was like, oh yeah, that one doesn't sound like first degree, it sounds like second degree or whatever, then like you would almost have to just throw the whole case out, I think.
Right. I think that's how it works too. Like you have to, and you want to, I guess what I'm trying to say is if they try her all separately and then like she's not found guilty for one of them, then it's like, oh, she's still found guilty for all these other ones. You know what I mean? So it's like better, I guess. So she gets individual trials for each of these 7 victims, which are the known victims. She could add more. Who knows? Ty testified against her in court, and Aileen was obviously pissed about this. And then she tried to claim self-defense, but she kind of went back and forth between saying, like, I was raped, they were robbing me, I was trying to rob them. Like, there is a lot that goes on in her interviews, and they're quite amusing, I could say. And she ends up getting 6 life sentences. She was finally exited from this earth / executed on October 9th of 2002. A week before she was executed, she said, "There is no point in sparing me. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. I killed those men, robbed them as cold as ice, and I'd do it again, too. And I'd do it again." That made me think of that, like,
And I do it again. Bop, bop, bop. It's like a
pop, pop.
TikTok sound. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she says, "There's no chance in keeping me alive or anything because I'd kill again. I have hate crawling through my system."
So again, this totally reaffirms the thought or the theory that she got a taste for killing and she couldn't go back. Like she was like, "You're right. I killed them and I would do it again because I wish I would have killed her own abusers from her childhood because they messed her up, clearly."
Which, like,
You know? I don't know.
she could have just done that. I mean, maybe they were both already dead, but um so she didn't want a last meal. She just wanted a cup of coffee, which can't relate. I like to eat. But her last words, and here's where it gets spicy. Quote, "Yes, I would like to just say I'm sailing with the Rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus. June 6th, like the movie, big mothership and all. I'll be back." So when I first read it, I thought she meant like The Rock, like Dwayne Johnson. But
Don't bring Dwayne into this, please. He's innocent.
apparently that was not who she meant. I'm
No,
not sure.
I'm not sure what she meant by that. That sounds like crazy. Let's
I
be
know.
honest here.
Like a little like gibberish. And then she says, "I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie." Was Independence Day out at the time? Yeah, it came out in 96.
I also think I wonder if she means like she's gonna be back for what's that? What is that day?
The Rapture?
Yeah, the rapture. Maybe that's what she means.
But
Maybe
why did
she
she say
thinks
like
that-
the movie?
Maybe she thinks that Jesus like forgives her for for everything she's done because she did it as like revenge. Which that doesn't sound like Jesus, but whatever.
Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
Go off
Jesus.
then, Aileen. You do your Bobo.
So I mean, I'm not really sure what that all means. I'm assuming because she said big mothership and all. And you know how on Independence Day there's like that big thing, mothership. So I think that's what she meant, but she was in jail when that came out, and I guess I forgot that they have movies in jail, but that's basically all we got. However, I have a little segment that I like to call Weird Ass Quotes from Aileen Wuornos. Here we go.
Weird ass quotes from a weird ass bitch.
I'm gonna try to read it in her voice because I've watched the clip like 8 times because it's so weird.
Okay, actually, we should start this as a segment. Weird ass quotes from weird ass people.
That's not a bad idea.
I love it.
I like it.
And then you
Weird
could say
ass quotes.
weird ass instead of like
Weird ass. Give a fuck about it.
yeah, basically.
So here goes nothing. Does somebody want to play the interviewer? I'm just kidding. There's only one line. Okay.
Aileen, what do you have to say for yourself?
That's not what they said. Okay. Anyways, those men were shot. Just shot in self-defense. Boom, boom, boom. You know? They weren't cut up. They weren't sliced up. No OJ Jazz. You know? And he says, I did the most horrendous crime in the whole wide world. Not true, asked the interviewer. I guess not. All they were was shot and left. And I wrote in parentheses at this part, incoherent mumbles. Like she just makes these weird noises. If it was a horrendous crime, why didn't I shoot them between the eyes? Cut their penis off, stick it in their mouth. You know, do all kinds of gross stuff. All they were was shot, and I left.
Why didn't you do that, Aileen? That would have been way more Macarena cool.
Oh, Caitlin, no, it wouldn't have.
Wait, no. I love when she says boom, boom, boom. Like,
Dude,
boom,
go
boom,
big or
no,
go
it's
home.
A chopper. Hold up. Wait a minute.
It's a chopper. No, the part that really got me was no OJ Jazz.
What does that mean?
Not OJ Simpson.
I mean, obviously OJ Simpson, but like, what? Who
Out
is,
of context,
also,
orange juice is all that makes sense.
how does she have so many pop culture references in her quotes? Like, I thought that she was like
In prison?
homeless and busy murdering people. Like, I'm confused.
You know what the best part is though? Like, you guys have to watch the interview because she's so like nonchalant. Like she's just like, no OJ Jazz, you know?
Because I literally think that I mean, kind of as like we'll wrap it up with final thoughts because we're close to the end. But I mean, I think it's truly because she thought that all of her killings were kind of justified in one way or another. Like,
which, like, depending on your outlook,
even if we don't, and I don't agree with that, obviously, but she justified them in her own mind, regardless of whether or not they like started out raping her or not, right? So
yeah,
I think
which
that
not that
depends.
I mean, I honestly don't know what to say because I don't want to like be
I mean, we kind of said
controversial, but I honestly believe that, and we don't know, but if these men like genuinely were raping her, and I feel like that's unrealistic, but I don't want to like discount her experience. But if they were truly raping her, she still did something wrong by hiding the body. But like I could see like killing somebody in self-defense or like out of anger after being raped. Like these things aren't like that crazy of a reaction. And so whether that happened, whether she was just the first one was a rape, whether the first one was a rape or wasn't a rape and like she just hated men, I still think like there's something to be said about she definitely justified it in her own mind, and it definitely like legally wasn't justified. But I mean, people that have been through similar things, I could see them being like, oh, makes sense, you know? So any other thoughts?
No. We've said it all. Depends on what boat you're in. Depends on what your boat you're in, but I think that regardless of what theory path you kind of fall down, this is a really interesting case, especially.
Well, not to mention this is like one of the only female serial killers like ever.
Yeah,
well,
honestly.
Not true.
I said one of.
I'm pretty
I am aware of
salty.
some other ones.
I'm pretty like, for some reason this like grinds my gears, and I think it's because I watched too much Bailey Sarian. But every female serial killer story, they're like, this is the first female serial killer, and I'm like, bitch, what about these other ones? And so it's just kind of like funny.
I mean, there are significantly less female serial killers. Like that's
Well,
just
there
the
was like
truth.
By
there was
like
like that
a
lady.
large
There was that
majority.
there was that lady that killed all the babies in the 1800s.
Huh?
Mhm.
What?
Yeah, that's a story for a different day. Tune in next week.
Da-na-na-na-na-na.
I mean, we're not going to talk about that next week, but tune in next week for another crazy quotes from crazy ass people. Crazy ass quotes from crazy ass people. I think.
Well, and
Very cool.
give us some like suggestions on cases that you guys want to hear, because I feel like we want to try to do like lesser known ones if we can, because I think that's just more interesting.
Yep. That's a
Yeah,
good point.
I don't like to do like super popular ones. So if you guys have any, like, please tell us, because we want to hear some feedback. And honestly, it makes us happy when you guys interact with us. Thanks for tuning in this week, guys. We would love to hear some feedback or just your thoughts on the case, any theories.
What theory do you fall
Yeah.
under? Yeah.
And honestly, like, I would love to hear how some of you feel about the death penalty. Just so we can kind of get a discussion going about that from you guys' side, because I'm scared to like talk about it, because I know people have very aggressive and like strong feelings about that, which is understandable. But so let us know,
after all.
right? Let us know what you think on our Instagram, at Who Aware Podcast. So give us a comment, like and subscribe. I'm just kidding. And we will see you guys next week. Hopefully we'll have a bonus episode out soon, just sprinkled in there. We all have kind of busy lives, so we appreciate you guys being flexible with us. I know sometimes we don't upload on Mondays, but is it Mondays? Yeah.
We still upload once a week.
We're trying. Yeah. So thanks, guys. Have a good week. We'll see you next time on Who, What, Where, a true crime podcast.